Welcome to The Explainer. So, you've probably heard the big news. A beloved Avenger is officially coming back to the Marvel Universe. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one hero's return. It might actually be a sign of something much, much bigger, and maybe even a little worrying for the whole franchise.
Yep, it's official. Chris Evans is back as Steve Rogers in the next big Avengers movie. And look, while that's generated a ton of buzz, not everyone is popping the champagne. For a lot of people, this news actually raises more questions than it answers.
In fact, there's a growing feeling that this move points to a really big problem inside Marvel Studios. We're talking serious questions about their creative direction, and maybe even the overall health of the entire franchise. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's break down the actual announcement. Because the way they worded Steve Rogers' return, it's super specific. And that wording, it's the key to figuring out what's really going on.
And here's the big clue. The announcement says Steve Rogers is returning, not Captain America. And as we all know, that mantle now belongs to Sam Wilson, right? So we're getting the man, but not necessarily the hero. This is the very first hint that this return isn't going to be what a lot of fans think it is.
All right, so you might be thinking, what's the big deal? It's a fan-favorite character coming back. But for a lot of critics, the problem isn't who's coming back, it's about what his return does to the story we already saw. I mean, just think back to Avengers Endgame. Steve Rogers' story was probably one of the most complete, most satisfying character arcs in the entire Infinity Saga. He finally got that dance, he got to live his life with Peggy Carter. It was, a perfect ending. Totally earned. In this quote just nails it. The whole argument is that by yanking him out of that perfect retirement, Marvel is basically cheapening the emotional punch of his Endgame finale. And let's be real, that was one of the best character endings in the entire MCU. So, how exactly does that perfect ending get totally wrecked? Well, the rumors go something like this. Steve's choice to stay in the past, it apparently creates something called a temporal incursion, which is just a fancy way of saying a massive break in the timeline. And get this, that very event is what supposedly leads to the rise of Doctor Doom. So his happily ever after literally becomes the cause of the next universe-ending threat. No wonder he has to come out of retirement.
Which brings us to the big question. Why? Why on earth would Marvel risk messing with such a perfect, beloved character arc? Well, the answer might have less to do with telling a great story and a whole lot more to do with the bottom line.
Yeah, to really get this decision, you have to look at where the MCU has been for the last 5 years or so. Because let's be honest, the franchise is in a completely different spot now than it was back at its peak.
I mean, the post-Endgame era has been, well, a bit of a rocky road for Marvel, right? We've had a bunch of films that felt kind of underwhelming, some straight-up box office disappointments, and this general vibe of superhero fatigue that's made a lot of longtime fans just check out. So when you look at it that way, bringing back a legacy star like Chris Evans starts to feel less like a cool creative choice and more like what some are calling a Hail Mary. It looks like a desperate play, using nostalgia to try and drag those fans who left back into the movie theaters.
But here's the kicker. This whole strategy, we've seen it before, like very recently. And let's just say the results were not great. Okay, so let's just define the term we're talking about here. Nostalgia bait. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's when a studio banks on old glories, familiar faces, cameos, and callbacks to get people excited, instead of coming up with a new, compelling story.
And if you want a perfect example, look no further than DC's The Flash. That movie was built from the ground up on nostalgia and legacy cameos. And it was a massive box office bomb. It's a huge, flashing warning sign for any studio trying to use the past to sell its future. So the lesson seems pretty clear, right? Audiences are smart. They've caught on to this tactic. You can't just slap a few familiar faces on a poster and expect a blockbuster anymore. You need a reason for people to show up, a story that actually feels like a can't-miss event.
Okay, so you've got the undone happy ending, what looks like a desperate strategy, and an example of it failing spectacularly. It all boils down to one final billion-dollar question for Marvel.
Now, this next point is kind of harsh, but it really gets to the heart of the whole debate. The argument goes that having to lean this heavily on old heroes is basically admitting that the new generation of characters, well, they just aren't connecting with audiences in the same way.
And, there might be some truth to that. Even with this massive news about Steve Rogers coming back, the reactions online haven't been all sunshine and rainbows. The buzz just doesn't feel the same as it did during Marvel's golden age,
So, as we wrap this all up, the real question isn't just, will Steve Rogers return to save the day? It's, will the audience return with him? Are you willing to go on one more mission? Or is this the time when nostalgia just isn't going to be enough to get you back in that seat?
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are diving deep into some absolutely massive alleged leaks for two of the biggest upcoming MCU movies, Avengers Doomsday and the next Spider-Man film. And look, if this stuff turns out to be true, we're not just talking about a few spoilers. This could literally change everything we think we know about the future of the MCU. So, what's the deal here? Well, some alleged promo clips and even audio files have supposedly surfaced, and they might be giving us our first real glimpse at the tone, the plot, and the emotional core of where our heroes are headed. So let's break down what these leaks could mean for Captain America, for Thor, and of course, for Spider-Man. Okay, first up, the man who started it all, Steve Rogers. The word on the street is that he's coming back, and in a huge way. But here's the twist. He's not the Captain America you remember. It seems the original Sentinel of Liberty might be returning with a brand new and honestly, a much darker identity. So, the big theory here is that Steve Rogers is coming back as Nomad. I mean, the name itself tells you everything you need to know, right? A nomad is a wanderer, someone without a home, and that perfectly describes the life he's supposedly been living since he went back to return the Infinity Stones. Just a man adrift, constantly moving through the multiverse. A hero like Steve Rogers doesn't just go on the run for no reason. There has to be something, or someone, chasing him. The leak suggests that that someone is one of Marvel's all-time greatest villains, Doctor Doom. And this isn't about taking over the world. This is something way more personal. So why would Doctor Doom be hunting Steve Rogers across all of reality? Okay, and this is where it gets really, really tragic. The theory goes that when Steve traveled back in time in Endgame, his actions created incursions, basically universes colliding with each other. And these incursions may have cost Doctor Doom his family. So now, Doom is on a path of revenge, and his target is Steve's child, a kid who is described as a walking incursion, a living threat to the multiverse just by being alive. Wow. And get this, in one of the alleged promo clips, there's a timer shown counting down. But this is not just some cutesy countdown to the movie's release date. Oh no. The leaks claim it's an in-universe doomsday clock. It is literally ticking down to the absolute end of everything, the complete annihilation of the entire multiverse. This whole idea signals a super somber, almost hopeless tone, which lines up perfectly with the famous Time Runs Out comic storyline. In that story, the heroes have already lost. There's no last-minute plan. You see Bruce Banner finally at peace with the Hulk, and even Tony Stark, the guy who can solve anything, just gives up. So what these leaks suggest is that Avengers Doomsday isn't a movie about heroes fighting to win. It's about them preparing to lose. That's a massive change from what we're used to. All right, let's move on to our next hero because this theme of despair just keeps building. The leaks also supposedly include an audio clip of Thor, and man, it sounds like he has been completely and utterly broken. This is not the mighty Avenger we know. This is a guy at the absolute end of his rope. In this alleged audio, he's talking to his father, Odin, and he's just rejecting all of his titles. He's not a king, not a warrior, not the god of thunder. He even claims he isn't worthy of life itself. The only thing he begs for is a little more time. Not for glory, not for battle, but just to see his adopted daughter love one last time. I mean, that just hits you right in the gut. And it immediately raises this huge, heartbreaking question: why is he separated from love? This is Thor we're talking about, one of the most powerful beings in the universe. What could possibly be keeping him away from his daughter? Well, the source material offers two chilling possibilities. So theory one is that Thor is trapped in some final, epic war against Doom's forces and he had to leave love somewhere safe. The second theory, which is way more terrifying, is that Dr. Doom has taken her, kidnapped her. And remember, love is literally the child of eternity. Either way you slice it, this paints a picture of a truly tragic and desperate god of thunder. Okay, let's completely switch gears and swing over to our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Alleged trailer leaks for his next movie, which might be titled Brand New Day, suggest a total reset for the character. After the world-changing events of No Way Home, it looks like we might finally be getting that lonely street-level hero we've all been waiting for. The leaks point to a grittier tone, with some classic comic book villains finally making their debut. We're talking Boomerang, a longtime Spidey foe. We've got ninjas that look a whole lot like the Hand, which could tie into Daredevil's world. And then there's the big man himself, the powerful crime boss Tombstone, running the whole underworld. On top of all that, there is a mysterious new character who many people think is Cindy Moon, also known as Silk, and she delivers a direct warning to Peter Parker, by name. Now think about that. She knows who he is, which makes her incredibly dangerous to him in a world where no one is supposed to remember Peter Parker. But the leaks save maybe the biggest bombshell for last. Remember that scene in No Way Home? You know, the one where Tom Holland's Peter is asking Tobey Maguire's Peter about his organic webs? Well, this new leak has fans buzzing with one giant question. Could this be the movie where Tom's Spider-Man finally develops organic webbing himself? The leaks don't confirm it, but they've definitely opened the door to one of the longest-running debates among fans. Let me know what you think. Is it time?